Hey everybody, Chris the Old Ass Retro Gamer here, and welcome to another episode of Top 3 Tuesday. Today my topic is going to be my top 3 Metroid video games. There's plenty of games in this series. I basically have a complete Metroid set, aside from the Game Boy Advance version of the Nintendo Metroid. I don't count that as absolutely being a must-own in my collection because I do own the NES version of the original. So I don't need 2 copies of the same game, but I do own it for the Famicom Disk System also, so I'm guessing I might have to get it, so we'll see. So since I have all the games in the collection, I figured it would be fun to show off which games are my favorite out of the entirety of the series. Samus is probably my favorite video game character. I think that she is fantastic. I love the way each game kind of gives you more story about her and the universe that these games take place in. I think she's interesting even in Metroid Other M, which is a game that everybody seems to hate. I think it's great because it gives you more insight into the world where these games take place. I'm a huge fan, as you can probably tell. So let's get going with my top 3 Metroid games. Metroid Fusion on the Game Boy Advance. Because Samus has been infected by like Metroid DNA, she now has new abilities, her suit is really cool looking, and there's like a clone of her running around. I think they called it the X Parasite. Kind of reminds me a little bit the way it shows up as like Mr. X from Resident Evil 2. I thought that was really cool and kind of creepy at times. It does not feel like a game developed for the Game Boy Advance. It feels like a Super Nintendo game. There were times where I forgot I was playing a handheld game. It's big, it's sprawling, the graphics are great, the music is great. Not that normally tinny type stuff you get with other Game Boy Advance games. Play control is great, and it advances the story in interesting ways. A hell of a lot of fun, and yet another great entry in this series. Metroid Samus Returns for the Nintendo 3DS. This game is actually a remake of Metroid 2, The Return of Samus, that came out for the original Game Boy. Probably my least favorite Metroid game out of all of them. I think the controls are terrible. I do not like the level design. It's just, I think that game is extremely frustrating. The remake, on the other hand, fixes every single problem that I had with that game, makes it so much fun to play, reworks a few things, even adds in a couple of extra play mechanics, like the fact that there's a certain moment where enemies will become vulnerable and you can stun them and then kill them with a one-shot kill. There's now a map, which was sorely missing from the Game Boy version. Everything about it looks amazing on the 3DS, including when you're playing the game in 3D, it looks crystal clear. There's a couple of areas where there's some ghosting, but other than that, I mean, it's one of the best examples of 3D on this console. The music is fantastic, the play control is tight, the difficulty ramps up evenly, and all the backtracking that you tend to do in all these types of games does not feel like a chore. A great modern update of the game in the series, which I felt needed it most. Was there any doubt that my number 1 wasn't going to be Super Metroid on the SNES? I talked about this in my top 10 games of all time video, that up until the point that this game came out, I was not a huge fan of the Metroid series. I had played the first game at a friend's house when I was a kid, and I thought it was okay. I was just like, wow, this is kind of boring and like exploration type stuff. I'd rather just blow things up. And then I played Metroid 2. I actually got a copy of that for my Game Boy, and like I said, I absolutely hated it. So I was not really looking forward to this game until I went to a local indie video game store by my house, and the owner of the store, who was a friend of mine, we had a good relationship going on. I talked to him, he would save stuff for me if I asked for it, put stuff aside. So if he was going to be selling me something and trying to talk me into buying something, it usually meant that it was pretty good, and this was one of those games. He talked me into buying it, and I did not regret it once I started playing it. This game is absolutely fantastic. And I think the best thing about this game, aside from the fact that the graphics are great, the music is moody, ambient type stuff. I love it. I would love to get a copy of the soundtrack of this on vinyl, but that bootleg of it is really expensive. The play control is spot on, just like in all the other games in this series, except for part 2. It is the level design, which I think is the star of the show here, because there's never any question that once you have unlocked a new ability, where you need to go in order to utilize that ability. Yes, there is all that backtracking that these games were known for. Does not feel like a chore at all, like it does in a lot of other games. It is a natural progression. It flows so well. It is a perfect example of game design, which is why I love this game so much, and I come back to it as often as I do. Otherwise, it wouldn't have been one of my favorite games of all time. And there you have it, my top 3 Metroid games. It is a fantastic series, very few lows, lots and lots of highs. It was really hard to pick my second and third choice because there are so many games in this series that I absolutely love. So what are your top 3 Metroid games? There's plenty of games in this series to choose from. I'm sure everyone's picks would be completely different. So you know what, YouTube gaming community? Let's see some response videos. I would love to see what your picks are, and I'm sure other people would as well. So if you decide to do a response video, leave the link to it in the comments below. I will definitely check it out. I'm sure a lot of other people will check it out as well. YouTube gaming community, unite! So I hope to hear from you soon, and until next time, and the next Top 3 Tuesday video, I am Chris, the old-ass retro gamer, signing off. A great modern update.